My books, I try to be as practical as possible. I don't want to get academic. I want you to be able to actually use this knowledge. So I'm a great believer in baby steps, in learning how to do things on a daily basis. So normally when we feel an emotion or we have an idea, we don't examine it. We just assume that's it's just natural. We came up with that on our own. I want you every single day to be examining yourself and to look at yourself. Why do I have that idea? Why am I feeling this sudden emotion? And it's not easy. It can take time, and it can take a degree of introspection that you're not comfortable with. But if you begin to look at yourself and question, why do I feel this way, and examine it and look at perhaps other sources of it, then you can begin this process of understanding, instead of just simply accepting that you feel or have this certain idea. So when I write the book on human nature, I admit that I have a negative bias towards human nature. I tend to see the dark side in people. I tend to see their manipulative side, what they're trying to hide. That was the source for the 48 Laws of Power. That was the anger I felt then, that people weren't being honest about how manipulative they can be. So I recognize that I have this bias. I recognize that that's who I am. Instead of thinking that, well, I'm just brilliant and my ideas are always correct, I question it, and I question, is my negative bias towards human nature, is that reality, or is it just me? And maybe it's just me because of the way my parents are. My parents were kind of anxious and worried about a lot of things, and I internalized that, and maybe that gave me my negative view on people. So I question it, and I say, maybe it's not real. Maybe I need to read books that tell me the other side of the story. And there are plenty of books, that say that humans are great. So question yourself. Stop assuming that everything you do is so brilliant and smart and right. And imagine that maybe your ideas don't come from yourself. Maybe you're feeling some political anger or whatever. It comes from the fact that you're just assuming it from other people. You're following things on Facebook and you're getting swept up in some viral emotion. You want to think that you're completely independent and autonomous, but maybe you're not as independent as you think.
So how do you want people to use your book as a tool as they go through? What exercises do you want them to do? Because I think some of a lack of self-awareness is not just I don't want to do the work, the introspection. It's a not understanding the process of what introspection is.
Well, some of it also is denial. Some of it also is a block that people have to look at themselves, because it is a little bit the confrontation with reality. But as far as the process is concerned, it's a daily thing. So first of all, the first and most important thing that you have to do is to come to admit, it's almost like an AA thing, that you have a problem. If you go through life thinking you don't have a problem, that you know who you are, that your relationships with people are fine, that everything is hunky-dory, then you're never going to be able to even begin to go into the process. So admit you have a problem. Admit you don't understand the people you deal with. Even your spouse or your children, they're mysteries to them. You don't really know what they're thinking. So admit that first. When you admit that, now you're motivated to try and learn. There are little steps you can take. I won't go through all of them. But the first thing is, if you take your wife or your husband, if you say to yourself, I don't really understand them. I think I do. But a lot of the times when you think you understand them, you're just simply projecting onto them your own emotions. Step back and say, today, I'm going to observe her, let's just say from my point of view, in a different way than I normally do. And I'm going to look at her nonverbal communication, because I'm a big believer in nonverbals. And today, I'm going to glean one truth about my wife or spouse or partner that I had never noticed before. And I'm going to try and see, perhaps get to the point where I can begin to understand her perspective. So if, for instance, there's an argument or a disagreement, here's another instance where you step back and you go, stop being so self-righteous, and maybe try and take the step of understanding her point of view. So, so these are sort of baby steps that you take in life. You can use this in your office, where you think you know your colleagues, but you don't know them, and they might be having thoughts about you that aren't very pleasant, that you don't want to confront. step back and start observing them. And I have many, many examples in the book about lessons on how you can start observing people, observing their body language, seeing the subtext behind their words, seeing their patterns of behavior. For instance, you'll notice sometimes, we all go through this, that when we see our boss, we get a kind of body language and a nervousness it's unusual. But when we see somebody else, like a friend, suddenly our face lights up and we're much more relaxed and happy. All people are like that. So you want to see how somebody reacts to you when you meet them, when you come up to them, and how they react to other people. And notice that there's a great difference when they see you and suddenly they're very nervous around you or they're very excited. That will tell you a lot about yourself and about them. You're not being observant. You mentioned Milton Erickson before we were talking about how incredibly observant he was. What he was fascinated with was how incredibly unobservant people are.
Let's go deeper into Milton Erickson, who is a shared fascination for you and I
love
and
Milton.
Seeing him in your book, was very excited, and you give like this blow-by-blow account of how he comes to what is really almost a superpower. His ability to read nonverbal communication is beyond powerful, but the way that you tell the story, it makes it sort of self-evident how he develops that. Walk us through, what happened when he got struck with polio, how he leveraged that, what some of those realizations were, and then how we can all train ourselves. And if you can touch on like what he learned about the word no. Like I found that really interesting.
Yeah. Well, Milton Erickson is an amazing figure. He's the person who created basically hypnotherapy and was the main inspiration behind NLP. And when he was about 18 years old, he suddenly got polio. And as his polio spread, his entire body was paralyzed. Even the only thing that wasn't was his eyeballs. He could move, he could look at people, he had some ability to see, move his eyes a little bit. And so I can imagine myself, I have a very active mind. Imagine you're paralyzed in bed, you can't read, you can't watch anything, no television, no entertainment. People can read you stories, basically. But how incredibly bored you'll become and how frustrating, and you can't do anything for yourself. You'd go crazy. So what Milton Erickson did, as he was in that state and he was living in his house and people were visiting him, is he decided he would observe people on a much higher level. Now he couldn't say anything, he couldn't communicate because his mouth was paralyzed as well. So all he could do was observe, and observe people closer and closer. And so he noticed that as he progressed in that, there's this second language that people speak, and this language is nonverbal. It is in gestures, it is in tone of voice, it is in just your body posture. And slowly, over months and years of being paralyzed in this position, he literally mastered this second language. He could tell from the way his sister moved her hair like that or moved her head that she was feeling some resentment towards her other sister. He noticed, as you said, that there were like 5 different forms of no. That someone could say, no, I don't want that apple, when they were offered to it, but they really meant, yeah, I really do want that apple. And so he noticed that there were all these different variations of no, depending on the tone of voice. He could hear people in another room talking about him, and through that, the tone of their voice, he could understand what they were really trying to say about him and the subtext behind the words that people have. And so as people talk and they use words to conceal what they're thinking, their bodies reveal what they're actually thinking behind the words through their nervousness, their tone of voice, their eyes. The eyes and the mouth tell you incredible amounts of information. Milton Erickson mastered this language, and as he got older, he used this in his therapy, where he would have patients enter his room. He became a psychoanalyst. And he deliberately placed his desk at one end of the corner so they would have to walk into the room. And he could understand from the way they walked and their gait, whether they were nervous, whether they were excited, whether they wanted to change their lives or not. He was so brilliant at it that people later in life, people thought he was psychic. He could literally read your thoughts. It was unbelievable. So the point of this story was that humans have this ability to master this second language. Put yourself in the position of our earliest ancestors. I mentioned this earlier. They don't have language, yet their survival depends on getting along with the group and knowing, like, you're hunting and where is that leopard? What's going on? But you can't say anything. You don't have language yet. So your ability to pick up fear in the eyes of a fellow group member or to pick up excitement, your survival depended on it. So I maintain that our ancestors were virtually psychic in their ability to attune themselves to the nonverbal communication that people are constantly emitting. So the idea in this book is we humans are constantly emitting information about our real emotions. It comes out non-verbally. And you're not picking up these signals. You're so focused on people's words that you're missing this other reality, which is so incredibly eloquent. And I try and instruct you in the book about how you can become a superior observer of this.
I find it very, I don't know the right way to frame this other than to say that while I wouldn't wish a stroke on anybody, the fact that you in particular are able to bring back the lessons from that, what are you doing on a daily basis to get those joyful moments despite all the restrictions?
Well, I have to be honest, it's a struggle. You know, some days I'm very successful and I feel very excited and happy. Some days it's like I've got Tourette's syndrome. I'm just walking around going, fuck, 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 fuck. I'm so upset. I'm so frustrated. And so I'm daily having to struggle with myself. And so whenever I feel that level, the frustration is very easy to explain. Imagine that you can't really button your shirt, that your left hand is so weak that it takes you forever to button your shirt. To get dressed in the morning takes like 10, 20 minutes. To like get my vitamins off the shelf is this kind of ordeal. I can't type. So just my hands. So you take for granted, you out there, you take for granted your use of your hands. Brother, I can tell you, the hand, or sister, that hand is a miracle. You have no idea if you lost one of your hands, what a nightmare it would be. Don't take it for granted. The fine little things that your hands can do, because I can't do them anymore. You know, I can't walk in a normal way. I'm always kind of losing my balance. I have to hold on to things, etc. So the frustration is every single day. There's a tenseness. Like, am I going to fall? Am I going to drop this? Can I hold on to this? Can I get this done? And it builds up until your body starts getting tense before anything ever happens. So I have to fight that. And I have to feel it before it happens. And I have to go through kind of a mantra of, you are getting better. You're just not aware of it, Robert. It's something you can't see. It's so gradual that it's going to take 3 or 4 more years. Calm down. It's not like this is going to be you forever, et cetera, et cetera. Other times I don't believe my mantra and I get upset. So it is a daily struggle. And I can go through weeks where the struggle seems great and I'm fine. And then suddenly I'll fall through this hole where I'm just like, damn it. You know, I see people walking by on the street taking a hike. Just 3 years ago, that was who I was. It's not who I am now. I'm like a different person. I want to cry, you know? I can't do the things that gave me pleasure. So sometimes I can't control it when I see things in the world that remind me of my past life. But I had to find compensation. So I can't take a hike up into the beautiful Griffith Park, which is very beautiful with incredible woods up there. It's something I love doing. I can't ride a bicycle, but I found a recumbent bike. It's basically a tricycle, a souped up tricycle, right? But I got the top of the line trike, recumbent trike, right? The best you can get, the fastest, the lightest weight one. And now I'm able to go up these incredible hills like obviously slower than normal people, a normal bike, but I can go up the biggest hill you can imagine. And I do it, and I go up into the hills and the woods, and I'm alone, and it's my therapy. And I know that it's ephemeral, that it only lasts for like half an hour, an hour. I'm suck every second of joy out of that, being in the woods that I can, being alone and being away from everything. So I've had to find compensations, I had to look at the little things around me and find insanely beautiful things about them. Also, I had the kind of stroke that damages the right side of the brain, which has an effect on you in many ways. But the main thing is, your right side of your brain isn't communicating to the left side. So your left arm, your left leg isn't getting signals from the brain. That's why I can't do the things I can't do. But it saved my cognitive abilities. So if it's hit my left side, which people have strokes, that's the kind of people that lose the ability to talk, that can't really think straight. I wouldn't be able to write a book. So every day, 3:00, if I'm lucky after I've exercised, I sit down, I'm with my Sublime book, with my notebook. I'm in heaven. Nobody bothering me. Please don't call me. If you call me, I'm going to cuss you. I'm going to get the fuck out of my hair. I'm only working on my book. I am the happiest little baby in the world, because that book is saving me. It's my therapy. So I've found compensations. But, we talked earlier about patience. I'm patient in some sense, to write a book, but I'm also impatient in another sense, right? I'm impatient with my body, with my physical things. I want to be able to do things now. And so I've had to learn a different form, like a meta patience, a whole other level of patience. And it's a work in progress. That's all I can say.
Talk to me about hope. How is it, as you do physical therapy and try things and you make some progress, but not as much as you want, how do you continue to renew your hope?
It's the most hardest thing, and it's the most important thing, I can tell you. Because the moments that I don't feel hope, I'm just kind of ready to give up. What's the point of this? So I have to continually rekindle it. And it's been a roller coaster ride, because in the beginning, people will say, Robert, you've got to try this. You've got to try hyperbaric chambers. You've got to try this acuoscope that this guy has. You have to try the stem cell research. You have to go this and that. And I get my hopes up. I go, all right, I'll spend thousands of dollars on this new form of therapy. I do it. A little bit of change, but nothing really happens. Then my hope sinks. It's like, I don't know what the expression is, a god that dies every single time this happens. That's how I explain it. Like, I had this belief in something, and then it got burst. It's very painful. And so, people are constantly suggesting new forms of therapy. My hope rises. And I have to be able to control that and know that there is no quick fix on this. The actress Sharon Stone had a stroke very similar to mine. Right. At a comparable age. And I actually was going to try and contact her. It sounded like we had very similar experiences. She wrote that it took her 7 years to get back to a normal kind of life. I've done 3 years so far. So I have to tell myself that there are no quick fixes. And she herself did every form of therapy imaginable. And believe me, people are well-meaning. And they say, Robert, you got to try this, you got to try that. I've gone to the point where, like, please don't tell me that anymore. I don't believe in quick fixes. I have to do this day by day by day. I have to retrain my body, So I'm trying a new form of therapy right now. It didn't instantly give me results. It's something very interesting. It's based on Feldenkrais. Fascinating new way.
What is Feldenkrais?
It's a whole different way of looking at your body, and I find it fascinating. It's just not hyper designed for a stroke victim, but I think somebody will someday. It's based on this idea that the body is a whole unit, right? So you can't isolate the parts. The body works as a whole. It's a complete organic whole. So if you have back pain, it doesn't stem from your back. It stems from your pelvis. It stems from your hamstrings. It stems from how you move your legs. It stems from your neck, the whole body. And we have built-in tensions all over our body. We use muscles that we don't need to use, right? So every time you're about to lift something or do something arduous or even psychologically do something arduous, the chest muscles tense up as if that will help you somehow get over what you're doing. But you don't need the chest muscles. They're not designed for that. You're using muscles that you don't need that are expending energy. If only the muscles that were necessary to do the job were firing, everything would work so much better. So the Feldenkrais, this is called the Anat Banil method. She was a student of Feldenkrais. There's an ideal of the body that I can sense when I do the lessons, where you're on a whole other level. You're like only using the muscles that are necessary. You're moving with this kind of grace and elegance and efficiency that wasn't existing before. All the bad habits with our necks, our shoulders, and the psychological stuff that they put you through. It's very powerful. It's just not geared specifically for a stroke victim. Then I'm doing another form of therapy. Tom, you have no idea how boring this physical therapy is, right? So when I'm used to exercises that's kind of fun, even lifting weights can be fun because you see your muscles building, right? You feel your heart pounding, swimming, running. It's all kind of fun. This is like little micro movements with your knee, with your leg. It's so boring. So I have to like put music on. I have to watch the ball game. I have to do something to distract myself. So, I mean, I'm going through all the weeds here of my process, but
well, so what I find interesting about it is just inevitably all of us are going to go through something or have gone through something, and how we deal with that crisis is so telling. And the fact that we were talking before we started rolling, that typing is hard. And so here you have an author and you've taken away one of the ways by which they get that out. And as somebody who's thought, so I'm a late bloomer and I have this real sense of wanting to make the most of the time that I have.
Late blooming meaning when? How late were you blooming?
The skills stack, right? So I feel like I'm getting better, but like when I think about things that I'm 45 now and I'm only just now getting confident in certain abilities. Thank you.
It's your secret.
Diet, exercise, sleep, meditation. That really, there's nothing magical. I do not come from great genes. I'm very sad to report. So when I think about the things that are just now beginning to click for me, and I'm like, oh my God, like I see even people on my own team that are 10 years, 15 years ahead of where I was. It's very easy to be jealous that, oh my God, you have this insight, so many years before I did, and how much more time will you be able to make use of? But very quickly you realize that's not a fruitful way to approach it. And so this was years ago now, maybe 5 years ago, I did this thing to celebrate, I forget how many subscribers we had on Facebook or YouTube or something. And I went live for 24 hours. So I was on camera for 24 hours without the only breaks I took were to pee.
Wow.
And then 3 days later, I was in England and I gave a speech and I didn't have a microphone. And so for 9 hours, I was essentially yelling to this large crowd. And then I woke up and my voice was weird. And it didn't go away. And I felt like I had a lump in my throat. And then like when I would turn my head, I could feel something click. And I was like, ooh. So then of course I'm like, is this cancer? Like, what is this? And you start thinking, what would happen if I lost my voice? As a leader, even just in business, forget being on camera, my ability to persuade, to galvanize a team, to get people excited and focused, I have learned to do it all with my voice. And so I started thinking, what would happen if I lost my voice? And it's like, okay, like I would definitely have to mourn. I would have to go through a period where it's like, I'm just going to feel badly for myself for a while. But then it's like, you make use of what you have. But it really made me take stock of, I had taken my ability to speak for granted for, at the time, whatever, 39, 40 years. And now I don't. And now I'm very thoughtful. And so getting the kind of insights of the struggle that you're having, it's very useful.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's inevitable for everyone. You may not go through a stroke, but you're going to deal with some kind of adversity where the physical things that you took for granted are taken away from you. That just happens. It's the nature of life, and it can occur at any age. So these are skills that you have to develop, but the main thing I try and tell people is, I don't know how powerfully I can implant this in your brain, but do not take for granted what you have right now. Because I can tell you I did. I thought I'd be swimming the rest of my life. It was my life. It meant so much to me. Do not take for granted what you have now. When you're doing these activities, feel insane amounts of gratitude that you have a body that can perform these things, because it could be taken away from you tomorrow, right? So that's the number one thing I want to tell people. It's not to get anxious and paranoid and fearful about the future. That's not going to help you at all. You need to have a joyful life, a happy life. So, but look at what you have right now, and look at the marvels, the things you don't realize, as I said, what your hands and legs and brain can do. It's absolutely miraculous and awesome. So just look at it that way. And then if these things happen, we are creatures that are able to accommodate ourselves to things. We can be very good at that, right? We find compensations for it. I mean, the other thing, being 45, I was a later bloomer than you, I think. I mean, I didn't start writing the 48 Laws until I was about 36, 37. You were doing things well before that, if I remember.
From a business standpoint, yeah. Your story of late blooming is really extraordinary. Like, it's amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean, so, until I was 36, I was pretty lost. I wasn't like starting a great business like Quest and all these other things. I was a struggling, depressed, penniless screenwriter in Santa Monica in a one-bedroom apartment, in this kind of rundown apartment building, right? And then suddenly my life changed. So I'm as late a bloomer as you can get. But there's a reason why you bloom late, if you bloom at all, which is it comes at the moment that you're ready for it, right? So people who are 32, 33 that you might be envious of, they're not ready to create what you're able to create now with all of your experience and all the things you've learned, with all the businesses you've started, all your entrepreneurial skills, all the people you've interviewed. You have that rich landscape of a brain that we're talking about. That 32-year-old, they may have some more experiences than you had, but they have nowhere near the ability to exploit it like you have now, So
yeah, I like to run the brain in a vat experiment. And that, I find it really useful. And every time I explain this to people, I never see the sort of spark in their eye that I want to see. But for me, this has been really liberating, which anytime I find myself thinking, woe is me or whatever, I say, hold on. Imagine for a second that all of this is just the frame of reference that you need. Literally, you came into existence in this moment. You're a brain in a vat somewhere, and all the trauma, sadnesses, failings, all of that is the context, to your point about emotions, is the emotional context that becomes necessary for you to make decisions and move forward.
Right.
So rather than lament it, just like make sure that you're making decisions that propel you forward. And even though I don't believe that, I think my life was lived and it is exactly what I think it is. And the traumas and all of that are all real and they're just a part of me. But there's something about running that thought experiment that allows me to recontextualize the purpose of, whether it's lamenting being a late bloomer or my big lament, which you talk about in the book, just not being as smart as I want to be. Like when I see people that can really process data quickly, I get so jealous to this day that everybody has their thing. That's my thing. And, but realizing that if you look at it from just a slightly different angle, all of a sudden it's like, all right, I'm good.
You process data very quickly.
You think that because you're talking to me about subjects that I've already thought about.
Oh.
If you were talking to me about a subject that's totally new, it certainly startles me every time how long it takes me to really, like, I would never be a debater on national television. I will just tell you that.
Well,
so that does not speak to my strengths.
That's a very specialized skill.
That I wish I had.
No, really?
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I've been at social gatherings where there'll be this one person I know who has these meetings with the smartest people around. And these whippersnappers who are 25, 26, and they're doing what you're doing. They've got all this information, all this snappy stuff, all these anecdotes. Damn, where's that coming from? I'm just not like that animal, right? I'm slow. I'm deliberate. I need to read about, I need to process things. And I go, slowness is a good thing, right? They may be a whippersnapper, but they may be not being able to like go into depth about anything. They're on the surfaces. They're kind of regurgitating ideas and beliefs that are kind of on the surface, that they're good at fooling people, but they're not going into the depths. People who go into the depths are slow, are deliberate, take time to think, who are more thoughtful, and are more patient. So I wouldn't want to be that fast, that high-speed processor that they have, because I don't think that's where great things come from.
It's interesting. That's a very good way to think about it. The harder way to think about it, though, is to say, what if they really are just better than me? And now facing that. So the one that I always pose to people is, I want you to imagine that someone you really respect doesn't respect you. That's hard. Now, if you can deal with that, like if I can stare nakedly at my own inadequacies, compare myself to somebody who just objectively is better at something that I want to be good at. So not even discounting, like, sure, there might be trade-offs, but can I look nakedly at somebody who is truly better than me at something that I want to be great at and still find joy and fulfillment in my life? That to me is like, that's the question. And so I've tried to get myself to a place. You talked earlier, I thought this is so brilliant, that your ego gets knocked down, but you have these mechanisms like a thermostat to reset your sense of self. That to me is the juice. You have to get good at that. And so I used to really get in emotional twists over this stuff, but I have learned some very useful techniques to keep my emotional equilibrium. So I can say that I'm envious of people that have that without diminishing my sense of self or, losing time and energy to worrying about it anymore. I used to. I don't want to paint that this was easy, but that to me is the trick.
Okay, but I still think your process of that they're so much better than me is a bit of an illusion, or the reason for being envious. Okay, so you combat your envy, all right? But I'm trying to tell you, I don't think there is a reason for your envy in the first place. So people, they're not as brilliant as you think they are, right? People are good at faking things generally, right? And then maybe they're not as happy as they seem to be. Maybe their life, you're just seeing them on television or with their snappy answers, but they're covering up everything else that's going on underneath, right? You're not seeing the full picture there, right? So there's generally, your envy is always kind of exaggerated because you're beginning from a place of insecurity. You're beginning from a place of inferiority where you're primed to feel envious of people like that. So it's almost starting with you. You're almost projecting onto them their superior qualities. And I find myself doing that. Yes, there are people who are better than me. I certainly know that. There's a writer I deeply admire who passed away recently. He's much more of an academic and intellectual. His name is Roberto Calasso. He was an Italian writer, wrote a lot about ancient Greece. That guy is far more brilliant than I am. He's amazing what he wrote about. I'm in awe of it, and I really mourned his passing. But I think it's important to feel for that, not envy, but just disinterested admiration for people who are superior to you, and to recognize it. I know there are plenty of writers and thinkers who are superior to me, and if they are genuinely that way, they're not bullshitting, my hat's off to them. We need people like that. It reaffirms my faith in humanity when I see someone that I think is vastly superior or great at what they do. I wish I could be like them. Okay, there are other humans on this world, it's not as bad as we think it is, who are absolutely brilliant. And, I feel that way about great scientists as well. I'm kind of a scientist manqué in a way. So,
what's a manqué?
Oh, sorry.
No, I love it. You're teaching me something new.
It's a French word. Manqué means a failed, I wanted to be, a wannabe. I'm a scientist wannabe sort of thing. I missed the boat. It literally means missed. So, I deeply admire it. And if I detect creativity in people, in their work, I'm in awe of it. and there are people who can do creativity that I can't even begin to imagine. That's where I feel awe and genuine admiration. I never feel envy. Believe me, I feel envy all the time, but not for people who are incredibly creative.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a great frame. I love that. Like you, when I meet somebody that blows me away, I love it. Like, I'm stoked. I'd be lying if I said that I didn't want it also for myself, but
Sure.
I'm stoked that it exists in the world. Yeah, that is very exciting when you see what humans are capable of, and then when you take us as a collective. And it's really interesting. So I was interviewed by a guy named Brian Keating yesterday, who wrote a book about I think it's called Into the Impossible, but he talks, his book is about beyond, like, getting rid of the Nobel Prize. I forget the exact title, Brian, forgive me, but he was talking about how the Nobel Prize has, like, caused some of the greatest scientists on planet Earth to commit suicide and, like, all this crazy shit. And I was like, what? And he was like, oh yeah, you get these guys are nominated for a Nobel Prize, but because they never win, it becomes so devastating that they can't live with it. And I'm like, you're nominated for a Nobel Prize, something that like 0.00001% of humanity will ever, achieve. But he was like, yeah, it's like a devastating thing for people. And he of course remembered all the people that had won, and I guess you have to sign this book when you win. And so in the book you see, like, Albert Einstein and all these other people. And he said, Feynman was like, well, I'm never going to be an Einstein. Einstein was like, I'm never going to be a Newton. Newton was like, I'm never going to be a Galileo or whatever. Right, and it was like, that all of these people were just like, we look at them and like, oh my God, like, that would be insane to hit that level. And each and every one of them had someone that they were like, well, but I'll never be that person. So fascinating.
Well, that's human nature in a nutshell, because I talk about that in the laws of human nature in the chapter about envy, that our brains operate by comparison. That's how it operates on the most basic level. A piece of information comes through our senses, and our brain immediately processes it by comparing it to previous things that we've experienced. So the brain only operates by comparing. So when you create a social animal that has a brain that operates that way and is conscious, obviously they're going to be primed to continually compare themselves to other people, right? So Albert Einstein was comparing himself to Niels Bohr, to other people he had insecurities as well. People who were into quantum mechanics and making these great discoveries, he felt that kind of little wound of envy as well, and it's been written about. So yeah, it's impossible to get over. The most powerful person in the world is going to feel that envy. And in fact, the higher up you go, the more insecure you might tend to become, and you wonder, do I still have it? I'm getting older. A lot of scientists reach their prime when they're 30, 35. Now they're 45 and they're 50, and that Nobel Prize slipped through their hands, even though they're absolutely brilliant. So they're going to be feeling envy. Envy is deeply, deeply human, and nobody wants to talk about it. It's the most common human emotion, and it's the least common topic that we ever discuss.
Except in your books, where you go into it beautifully, which I love. And that's part of the fun of your books, is it's all the things that nobody wants to talk about, and talked about well and articulately with stories and evidence. I mean, it's really fascinating. And for anybody that wants to, do what we were talking about earlier and develop that self-awareness, just hearing about it talked about so clearly is very helpful.
Oh, well, thank you.
Very helpful. Dude, I love your work. It has been a joy to have you on the show many times as I have. I cannot wait for the next one.
Yeah, this is my 4th time?
3 or 4, yeah. And hopefully there will be 5, 6. That's incredible. All right, my friend, I have a big announcement. My incredible and talented wife, Lisa, is about to launch her new book, Radical Confidence. In it, she has managed to perfectly capture the process of how to go from feeling lost and insecure to taking control of your life and doing amazing things despite feeling fear, sometimes a lot of fear. Now, let me tell you, nobody knows Lisa better than me, but when I read Radical Confidence for the first time and heard her describe what it was like for her to go from having these big, exciting dreams as a kid to then as an adult
scheduling her life around the TV shows that she wanted to watch, or how lonely and isolated she felt instead of pursuing her dreams, it was brutal for me. I would never say, though, that it was worth it for her to go through all of that just so that she could write something down that allows others to avoid it, but I will say that at least she was able to capture the strategies that she used to break out of that rut, find her voice, and begin doing incredible things despite her insecurities and fears that she wasn't going to be good enough to achieve great things. So while it hurts me to know the dark place that Lisa went through, I really am excited for people who are going through something similar right now to read this book. Radical Confidence is an instruction manual for how to become the hero of your own life, even when you're scared to death. Look, I know better than just about anybody how easy it is to get off track in life or to just not have yet found your calling. And it's even easier for people to feel so insecure and unprepared that they don't even want to pursue the things that they want. But what Lisa shows people in Radical Confidence is that the radical part is that you can accomplish extraordinary things even when you feel fear. That's what Radical Confidence is. Being afraid and unsure and having a toolkit that allows you to still make massive progress. Pre-order your copy today, because if you act now, you can claim the bonuses that Lisa has created for you at radicalconfidence.com. They're only available if you pre-order, so act now. Then, once you've done that, we'll get back to today's episode. All right, guys, read the book and get ready to be the hero of your own life. Peace out.
When I think about for something to be, for you to say that it's better to, to really self-analyze, it makes me think you have a goal. What is your goal maybe for your life? That might be the right place to start. Like, what to you is a life well lived in the context of you judging, doing the self-reflection and understanding how the way the world works becomes this exceedingly fun thing for you?
Well, I mean, you're asking really good questions, and I'm glad you're pressing me on that. I like that. But it comes down to what you want for yourself, right? So are you somebody that's interested in actually having power in this world? Are you someone that's interested in being successful in your venture, in real?
Define power for me. Most people think it's a dirty word. You've sort of made your life around that.
If you think power is a dirty word, you've got a problem. And usually the people who think power is a dirty word are the people who are the most manipulative and passive-aggressive animals on this planet. Because
that's interesting.
We humans naturally want power. We want a degree of control over our lives. So imagine the scenario where you can't control anything about your children. They just run wild. You can't influence them. You can't control any of the behavior of your spouse that's irritating the fuck out of you. You can't control your colleagues who are plotting all these things. You have and your boss is making you crazy. You have no control. That's a recipe for incredible, not only misery, but depression, for turning into all kinds of health problems, for turning to drugs and alcohol, for going off the deep end by the time you're 40, right? So you want power in your life. Power is, I have goals, I have a fate, I have a destiny in life. I want by the time I'm 40 to reach them. The ability to reach that, to have control over yourself and to a degree of your emotions, not repressing them, but some control, right? Will help you realize those goals. That is power. Power isn't like some politician up there, weaving all these Machiavellian things to hurt and destroy people. That's the cliche. You've been watching House of Cards for too long. I know nobody watches that anymore, but whatever the new show is. So that's not power. Power is the ability to guide yourself through a very dangerous world, very competitive world where we're almost all having to kind of work for ourselves, where we don't get much help or cooperation from the world. We're thrown out of the university if we go to college, and here we're in this world where there are no rule books telling us how to navigate it. It's very complicated and very difficult, and you make mistakes that you can suffer for. And power is knowledge, is ideas, is understanding how to navigate a very dangerous world. Okay, so you want that, to get back on track to what I was saying. So you want that, right? You want to be, this is something that I talk about in Mastery, the idea of wasting your potential, of never realizing your goals, of never being able to create that business you wanted to create, or make that film that you think is in you, or start the business that you're starting, Tom. That's what you want in life. And if you don't want that, there's nothing I can say that'll help you. right? I'm starting with the assumption that you want that, and I think most people do want that. Okay, so your rage, you're constantly wasting time on the internet. You're constantly being infected by the emotions of other people, is wiping away day by day, second by second, all of your own power, right? Because what is your power? Your power, as you, Tom, is to be able to realize what makes you different, what makes you unique. You had, I don't quite remember the full trajectory of your career, but I remember you early on with the health company that you had started and all this. And then you had a plan. Your plan is to create this kind of empire. I'm not trying to reveal your secrets here, but you had,
I'll reveal away.
okay, you have this idea of creating a new kind of empire, sort of a new Disney, right? And that comes from something within. I'm assuming that there's something of the child in you that wants that you've wanted that for a while, that it represents something that's unique about you. It's not something that comes from social media or the people around you. That could play a small role, but it's mostly something from within you. It's you, okay? And that's you. What makes you different and unique is your source of power. And the days you spend getting angry about things that have nothing to do with your day-to-day life, they're corroding that uniqueness of you, and they're making you a conforming Pavlovian dog that's just like everybody else out there in the world. If you look at the people who are truly successful and powerful, see them as kind of models or icons to reach, okay? And it's not to say that we all have to be incredibly successful to feel fulfilled. I'm not saying that. I know people who are really great carpenters who are great at that, and that's really fulfilling. And I know people who just want to be parents, and that's their life's task, and it's tremendously fulfilling. But the people who are really successful, even at those things, we can say that they're unique, that they're one of a kind, that there's nobody else like them, and that is the source of your power, right? So you want that. If you don't want that, I can't help you. But if you do want that, the time you're wasting getting enraged and being manipulated and feeling all these things and just getting into that lizard part of you is time you're wasting, and your life is a lot shorter than you think it is.
Whew, ending on a big one there. Before we get to mortality, death, all that, which I think is incredibly powerful, I want to talk about the idea of Carl Jung and the shadow side. So no, I don't think there's anybody writing today that speaks as eloquently as you do about the shadow, about the sort of dark energy that we all have inside of us that can be extraordinarily powerful. And I know you well enough to know your beliefs around this are nuanced, but listening to you as you were talking there, it's like, don't get sucked into rage. You're going to be wasting your life. Life is shorter than you think. That is true. But there's also an element of capture that rage, my friend, leverage that rage, point it at something that makes sense. And this is where it gets incredibly complicated, because if you have a goal and there's something that you want to go after, letting something piss you off can actually be quite powerful. And I talk to my students in Impact Theory University about this idea of having an animus, having something that literally animates you, that you can't live in a world where that thing is true, and holding on to your anger enough to turn it into something usable. So you're not just flailing around, reacting, freaking out, but it's like, hey, this is not okay. I'm going to fan the flames of that. I'm not going to let them burn me to death, but I'm going to fan the flames of that, get angry, and go do something about it. So how do you think about that? As you point out very aptly that the anger can cause you to waste your life, but also it's a tool. How do you help people reconcile that idea?
Well, these are all great. Another great question. Well, I'm thinking back on myself and the anger that propelled me to where I am today, which was largely my experiences in Hollywood. And just to tell that story very briefly, I worked in Hollywood from like the very late 80s into the mid 90s. And I saw a lot of very, very manipulative people, and a lot of hypocrisy, where it was supposedly all about creating great art or making a film, but really it was about power. It was about using people and getting what you wanted out of it, and getting more power than the other person and getting recognition. And that was the true subtext of what everybody motivated most people in Hollywood. And man, that pissed me off. The hypocrisy of that pissed me off. Okay. Now, is that something that comes from, is that just sort of a superficial reaction to me feeling like, because I wasn't successful, was I just simply hurt? Was it more like envy because I wasn't very successful myself in Hollywood, to be honest? Or did it come from something deeper? And in analyzing it, yes, it came from something very deep. Since I was a child, I've always been very, very sensitive to people's hypocrisy, to people pretending to be something that they're not. And I think a lot of children are like that. They have antennae for that. Right? And it really angered me. And then you could ask yourself, well, why?
Why does that anger you?
Because I feel like, it's like people pretending to be something that they're not,
And you just have an inherent value that's a bad thing?
It's not just an inherent value. It's just that we're all flawed creatures. And I must have been aware since I was a child that I am a flawed individual. Robert, I have dark emotions. I can be kind of bitter and aggressive and ambitious and hurtful, right? I knew from very early on of my own flaws. And it really irritated me that people pretended to be something else, that they weren't true to themselves. And I could see that in children who were pretending to be the little princess or the prince in their family, like they were perfect, that they were really good. And then I would see the other side when we, for mommy and daddy, they were all perfect. But then when we played, I could see the little nasty little rascal come out, right? I hated that. Okay, we could dig deeper and deeper. Well, why did I hate that? But I think it came from something very real something about me. So my anger at Hollywood wasn't really, I don't deny that there was an element of I didn't get success, so I feel kind of envious, because we all feel that. But I don't think that was the full picture. There was something very real about it. And because I've been feeling it throughout when I was a kid, it was feeling it throughout my 20s. It was the subject of all of the short stories, novels, and plays and screenplays I was trying to write. So it came from a very deep, real place. So when it came time to write my first book, The 48 Laws of Power, beginning in 1996, I had to draw on that anger, And if it had been something that wasn't really me, if it was something that was just a gimmick, I don't think it would have worked. So if your emotions don't come from something that's very profound about who you are, about that dark side, isn't something that you are, but it's like a gimmick, you're just pretending to be angry, and there are a lot of people who do that, or you're pretending to have some other kind of emotion. We humans, we can smell that. We can sniff out phoniness fairly well. But I felt it very deeply. And I disguised it in the 48 Laws. I channeled it into a book where you never really knew that it was from Hollywood. I never talked about myself, but you could feel the subtext of some kind of little bit of anger there at people's hypocrisy, right? So I took an emotion that was part of who I am, right? And I used it in very constructive, channeled, productive way, which is what I say about the dark side. So, to get back to the theory behind it, when you were a child, you were what I call you were like a round ball, a ball that had a front side and a dark side that's not visible, like the dark side of the moon, right? The front side was you're saintly, you're sweet, you're nice and loving to your parents, you treat your sister and your brother so well, you get along with all your friends. But the dark side was, wow, man, I really hate that kid. I'm going to pull her hair. I'm going to mess his homework. I'm going to do this. All the things that kids naturally do because we have an animal nature. We have aggressive impulses. This includes boys and girls. I'm not certain girls can be just as part of this as boys are. Okay, and then as you get older, that you're like cut that ball in half, and you only present that only. It's not only that you just present the good side; it's that you kind of forget about that other half, and it drops away from you, and you just pretend to be this good person because you're socially motivated to make people think that you're a nice, pleasant, socially aware person, and then all that dark energy gets repressed and repressed and repressed. But nothing ever goes away. That's the law of human psychology. things you felt when you were 3 or 4 or 5, they don't go away. They just sit in you. And they either sit in you and stew and then explode when you're 30 into some irrational behavior, or you're aware of it. You're aware that I feel this way. You're aware that I feel envy. You're aware that you feel aggression and anger. You're aware that you sometimes actually want to hurt people, okay? You're aware that you're a full human being and you're not a fucking hypocrite like so many people are out there. I have a dark side. It's part of who I am, all right?
But don't you try to keep that in check? I mean, it's not like, what's your prescription on that? Is it like, what does it mean to integrate the shadow?
It means, we keep coming back to this, you know, as I said, I'm so boring here because I keep repeating the same idea. It means you're aware of it, right?
But being aware that I'm angry or that I have bitterness or whatever, like, isn't it really because what I'm trying to figure out is, you and I react very differently to the sort of bullshit of Hollywood's a great example, because now as you have exited, I am now trying to enter. And because I am so hyper aware of how people talk about Hollywood, I came in and said, look, I'm just going to make my reputation I'm always going to tell you where I'm at. So when I see somebody being fake, full of shit, whatever, because I'm attuned enough to see it, for the most part, I'm sure people pull some things over on me. But for the most part, I feel like I can sniff it out, like you were saying before. But I have like almost a sadness that that's the only tool that they've learned to leverage. And so I don't get the sort of anger towards people that are manipulative or whatever. Go ahead.
That's fine, but what's your point?
So where I'm going is, how do you get to the point where now you're not just being aware of it, but you're using it? So it's how can somebody who's listening to this go, I am going to take so you gave us the example of how you channeled it into your book, but now just like in terms of daily life, I'm guessing when you see somebody being fake, you don't rage out on them. So you are restraining.
Sure.
Them. So when I talk about integration, is it the awareness leads to just being able to hold it back? Or is there, like, I will use it, if somebody's bullshitting me and they're trying to be aggressive to me, then I just be aggressive back. And so there's an element I feel like I can control it. Aggression, anger are tools in my tool belt, and I pull them out when I think they're appropriate.
Yeah. Well, that's good. But, you know, are you conscious? Are you aware that you're doing that? Or are you just simply reacting to people? Are you able to...
That's certainly been an evolution. Are
you able to use it in a somewhat strategic way? So, for instance, there's somebody you come across in Hollywood who is a manipulator and you can smell it, but if you like simply call them out on it, you might create some problems for yourself. You might create a counter reaction that will work against you. Are you able to step back and go, I need to be strategic with this asshole. I need to not just simply react. I need to say something that will either show him or her that this is what they're being like, or I need to take some kind of action that will thwart them. Are you able to do that, or are you just simply getting angry in response?
It's I'm very strategic, but at the same time, I want to feel good about who I am as I walk away from that exchange. So I don't want to feel like I'm just bullshitting people either. So normally I put it into asking questions about like, what's your goal? Or I'll even say like, it feels like you're angry with me or upset with me and I don't understand why.
Yeah.
And if you can help me understand, I'm certainly not trying to piss you off. And it has, like, I won't say it, I haven't been in it long enough to know what the long-term repercussions of my strategy are going to be. It's created awkward moments. It has certainly ended potential relationships. But I'm constantly trying to think about who I want to be in the exchange when I walk away and what I want my long-term reputation to be. And that means having the uncomfortable conversation up front so that what I say to you doesn't end up being different than how I actually move, if that makes sense.
But how is that your dark side?
Well, so what I'm trying to figure out in terms of what you mean by integrating. So I'm guessing it, hey, here's what I do, which is if somebody's being aggressive towards me and it seems like the right answer, then I will like let off like that little valve of, instead of repressing everything, I will let a little bit come out. But I don't know, the only way that I leverage my shadow is as energy when I'm alone. So I don't know that I'm integrating it in an intelligent way in these exchanges. And I think that's part of what I'm looking for is feedback on if there's a way that I haven't got. So here's how I present it to people that ask me. And I say 80% of your time should be in the light, should be in the beautiful things, the wonderful things you want to create, optimism, hope, compassion. 20% of the time, you're going to lean on, I call it the dark energy, the shadow side, where it is, for instance, when I am fucking exhausted to my core and I just do not have energy to keep going, in those moments, I think about the people that want me to fail. And I'm like, fuck them. I am not going to let them be right. I am not going to let them see me fail. It is a dark, ugly, petty energy, and it's fucking intoxicating, and it gets me up, and it gets me going, and it keeps me
You're
pushing.
answering your question right there. You're answering my question. There's your integration right there. You're taking an emotion that could be destructive if you acted on it in the wrong way, and you're using it as a way to motivate yourself. You're not spewing this at people. You're making it sort of sharpen your own ambition, your own goals, and go, I better get up in the morning and prove this idiot that they're wrong about me. You're not hurting them, but you're channeling it into something productive. So you just answered your question. That's very much integrating it. It's whether your dark side is used for destructive purposes. I'm not advocating that you hurt people. I didn't go out and ever name a single name of anybody in Hollywood who ever did it. You could read my book. You'll never know that that's what it was about, right? I didn't want to hurt people. I don't like you. I don't like hurting people. It makes me feel ugly. And that ugly feeling ends up costing me more than any kind of benefit I might have gotten from venting it, right? I don't want that. But so you're not actually trying to hurt people. You're using it to make yourself more productive. So, for instance, you have a business, you have ambitions, you have goals, and you use all the people who doubt you, like you're doing, and you're going to make that a motivating device. That's very powerful. Let's say you're an artist, and you've had your parents were really nasty to you. They were very abusive, and you carry that around with you. And it's like this 500-pound rock on your whole life. It's just pressing you down. And now in your play or your book or your movie, you let it out. And you don't say this is who they are, but you express it indirectly about very manipulative people, and you show your kind of anger in a work of art. And some of the greatest works of art have an underpinning of some kind of motivating anger. That's productive. Let's say there's something that really pisses you off in the world, some form of injustice, whether that's sexism, racism, whatever it is. Instead of just getting on Facebook and posting all kinds of stupid little things and not getting anywhere, you go out and you decide, I'm going to start a movement. I'm going to create some kind of social movement that's going to actually get something done. I'm actually going to contribute to society instead of just venting and spewing my own personal pet peeves. You're taking that dark energy and you're channeling it into something productive. That's the integration. You're not using it to hurt people. You're using it to motivate you to create something. And the other thing is, we live in a culture that is so politically correct, where people are so worried about, if I use this pronoun, am I going to offend that person? If I say this, am I going to lose my career? We're all so repressed that to see somebody who expresses some of that repressed emotion in their work, particularly in a work of art, it's like, wow, that's great. It's an attraction. It's a form of charisma that we'll have because you're less repressed than other people. So I'm trying to tell people that dark side contains incredible creative energy, incredible motivating power, like you said, when you get up in the morning, and use it. Don't be afraid of it, but use it. Does that kind of answer what you're asking?
Help us understand what the world is really like. What do you think is that key thing that people misunderstand?
Well, the key thing is it goes back to our nature and how we evolved as conscious animals. The key thing is there's an animal part of our nature, which is we completely take appearances for reality. That's sort of the source of our problems and our misery, to be honest with it, in life. So the front that people present, the way they look, the way they talk to us, their words, we sort of take at face value. And although we might think, or we might know from reading a book or whatever, that you can't always trust appearances, it's kind of a cliche. We can't control ourselves. So it makes us extremely vulnerable to charming people, to charlatans, to con artists, to politicians who say one thing, who do another, to relationships, terrible relationships where we fall in love with exactly the wrong person, to the worst kind of hires. You know, I do a lot of consulting work. I've been doing it for over 20 years now. The number one problem I deal with is I hired the worst person in the world and they're making my life hell, right? And why did you hire the wrong person? Because you judge them on their charming smiles, their appearance, their smooth talk, their resume, which you can conceal a lot with your resume. You didn't look behind the facade and look at what's underneath the character. So this is kind of ingrained in our nature. It goes back thousands and thousands of years. It's extremely difficult to overcome, right? And I have the problem too. I deal with it all the time. And I have to go through a process where I step back and I say, I don't want to be paranoid, but this person is so nice and pleasant. Is there something else going on behind the curtain that's there? You know, and then sometimes I tell myself, no, I have ways of judging that there's a consistency between the face and the reality, but oftentimes there is not. And I've become very good at that kind of bullshit detection, which I've been doing my whole life.
How do you get good at that?
Well, you know, some things are hard to put into words, which is why I struggle so much with my books. Because a lot of human communication, I estimated 95%, it's just a number, is nonverbal, right? So we don't pay much attention to that because we're so word-oriented, right? We're so embedded in language that we think everything in terms of what people say. But unconsciously, without even realizing it, we're continually judging people on their nonverbal behavior, right? So their eyes, their smile are different from what they actually say, but we're not really. So in a kind of a natural, intuitive way, we understand that, but we don't trust those kind of judgments, right? So we rely more on what they say than on the signals that we pick up from their body language. So years and years of training and being sensitive to it, it's probably something that has to go back to my childhood. If you put me on a couch and psychoanalyze me right here, there was probably something in my childhood where I had to learn how to really read people, not by what they said, but everything about them. And I have a kind of a feel, an intuitive feel for the energy, the vibrations, the mood that people give off, not through what they say, but through their body, through particularly their tone of voice and all the other signals. That is the main way of judging, you know, what's really going on. The other thing you look at are people's patterns of behavior, right? Things that have happened in the past. As I said in Laws of Human Nature, nobody ever does something just once, right? If somebody fucks up and does something kind of hurts you in some way, and they say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what came over me, that's not me. Don't trust that. It'll happen again. For sure, it will happen again a second, a third, fourth time.
What do you think is going on there? Because when you were going through the list of things, being in a bad relationship was the one that really jumped out of, you know, you hear people ending in these just like horrendous cycles of being stuck in this abusive relationship and the person manages to reel them back in. What is going on the side of the person who convinces themselves to go back into that relationship? Is there the need to be loved? Is there a wound or something that they're trying to deal with? And how do you advise people that are stuck in a loop like that?
Well, it's probably from some kind of primal wound, right? So there's a perverse part of human nature, which is oftentimes in early childhood, something happened to us, often something that didn't happen to us, like the love we didn't get or the nurturing that we didn't get. There's this kind of wound, this emptiness, this lack, right? And we grow up and we're not really aware of it, and kind of things grow over this wound. But what also happens, which is the perverse side of human nature, is that early on, our kind of sexual excitement is sort of kind of grows up around that wound.
Why? That is so weird and yet seems so self-evidently true.
Yeah.
But why?
Well, I'd have to go into something, you know, go inside my own psychoanalytic, mindset here. But when you're very young, you're extremely vulnerable. You're extremely open to the energies of other people in ways we don't understand right now, right? It's hard to imagine something what I'm writing about right now in my new book. When you're 2 years old, 1 year old, before you even had really mastered language, you're so dependent on other people. You're so open to them that their energy gets infused. It's completely internalized. And also, children at that age also have their sort of sexual nature is being created at that moment, at a very, very early age. Certain desires. For us, sex is not just a physical thing, it's an emotional thing, right? It's psychological. So things that we didn't get are charged with all of this kind of energy that then could later on turn into sort of desires. So let's say, for instance, you had a mother who was very narcissistic, who really wasn't giving you the normal mother, nurturing, empathetic energy. It was more about her, and you had to pay attention to her, right? Well, that kind of creates the sort of desire. You're as an infant, you really want that love from that mother. You're trying to attract it, pull it out of her as best you can. And your energy, your desire is surrounding her with this kind of emotional charged sexual energy. And you're going to find throughout your life, you're going to be attracted to narcissistic women. It's going to be your Achilles heel throughout your life, because you want to kind of heal that wound. You want to be able to play back that initial trauma and sort of rewrite the way it ended up, where now you're going to find this narcissistic woman and she's going to give you finally what you never had before, right? It's a very, very common pattern, right? And so you're not even aware of this. And it's extremely difficult to break out of, because your desire is for this type of person. So you might meet a woman, just doing it from a man's point of view, who isn't narcissistic, who's very empathetic and very caring. And she would be perfect for you. And you may even have a relationship with her. But the excitement, the energy, that charge isn't going to be as strong as with that other type. And you're going to fall back into the old patterns again and again and again. And the only way out of it is to go back and look at your early childhood and look at these wounds and confront them face to face and understand that you're a prisoner of this kind of things that were ingrained in you at a very, very early age.
And what does that process look like? Like, how do you confront something like that well? How do you even develop the awareness of the problem?
Well, you have to look at what's going on in the present right now. You have to be, first of all, it depends on how old you are and how many relationships you have, but you have to see your own patterns. And if you have unhealthy patterns where you have fallen again and again and again for the wrong person, you have to see a sort of a through line there. What ties it all together? What's going on, right? So, a common scenario that I wrote about in Human Nature is, in this particular scenario where your mother is giving you the attention that you think you want,